This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Moira Fogarty, Toronto, Ontario. Villette by Charlotte Brontë, Chapter 36, The Apple of Discord. Beside Fifine Beck's mother, another power had word to say to Monsieur Paul and me before that covenant of friendship could be ratified. We were under the surveillance of a sleepless eye. Rome watched jealously her son through that mystic lattice at which I had knelt once, and to which Monsieur Emmanuel drew nigh month by month, the sliding panel of the confessional. "Why were you so glad to be friends with Monsieur Paul?" asks the reader. "Had he not long been a friend to you? Had he not given proof on proof of a certain partiality in his feelings?" Yes, he had. But still I liked to hear him say so earnestly that he was my close, true friend. I liked his modest doubts, his tender deference, that trust which longed to rest and was grateful when taught how. He had called me sister. It was well. Yes, he might call me what he pleased, so long as he confided in me. I was willing to be his sister, on condition that he did not invite me to fill that relation to some future wife of his, and tacitly vowed, as he was to celibacy, of this dilemma there seemed little danger. Through most of the succeeding night I pondered that evening's interview. I wanted much the morning to break, and then listened for the bell to ring, and, after rising and dressing, I deemed prayers and breakfast slow, and all the hours lingering, till that arrived at last which brought the lesson of literature. My wish was to get a more thorough comprehension of this fraternal alliance, to note with how much of the brother he would demean himself when we met again, to prove how much of the sister was in my own feelings, to discover whether I could summon a sister's courage, and he a brother's frankness. He came. Life is so constructed that the event does not, cannot, will not match the expectation. That whole day he never accosted me. His lesson was given rather more quietly than usual, more mildly, and also more gravely. He was fatherly to his pupils, but he was not brotherly to me. Ere he left the class, I expected a smile, if not a word. I got neither. To my portion fell one nod, hurried, shy. This distance, I argued, is accidental. It is involuntary. Patience, and it will vanish. It vanished not. It continued for days. It increased. I suppressed my surprise, and swallowed whatever feelings began to surge. Well might I ask, when he offered fraternity, "Dare I rely on you?" Well might he, doubtless knowing himself, withhold all pledge. True, he had bid me make my own experiments, tease and try him. Vain injunction! Privilege nominal and unavailable. Some women might use it. Nothing in my powers or instinct placed me among this brave band. Left alone, I was passive. Repulsed, I withdrew. Forgotten, my lips would not utter, nor my eyes dart a reminder. It seemed there had been an error somewhere in my calculations, and I waited for a time to disclose it. But the day came when, as usual, he was to give me a lesson. One evening in 7 he had long generously bestowed on me, devoting it to the examination of what had been done in various studies during the past week, and to the preparation of work for the week in prospect. On these occasions, my schoolroom was anywhere, wherever the pupils and the other teachers happened to be, or in their close vicinage, very often in the large second division, where it was easy to choose a quiet nook when the crowding day pupils were absent, and the few boarders gathered in a knot about the surveillance estrade. On the customary evening, hearing the customary hour strike, I collected my books and papers, my pen and ink, and sought the large division. In class there was no one, and it lay all in cool, deep shadow, but through the open double doors was seen the carré, filled with pupils and with light. Over hall and figures blushed the westering sun. It blushed so ruddily and vividly that the hues of the walls and the variegated tints of the dresses seemed all fused in one warm glow. The girls were seated, working or studying. In the midst of their circle stood Monsieur Emmanuel, speaking good-humouredly to a teacher. His dark paletot, his jetty hair, were tinged with many a reflex of crimson. His Spanish face, when he turned it momentarily, answered the sun's animated kiss with an animated smile. I took my place at desk. The orange trees and several plants, full and bright with bloom, basked also in the sun's laughing bounty. They had partaken it the whole day, and now asked water. Monsieur Emmanuel had a taste for gardening. He liked to tend and foster plants. I used to think that working amongst shrubs with a spade or a watering pot soothed his nerves. It was a recreation to which he often had recourse, and now he looked to the orange trees, the geraniums, the gorgeous cactuses, and revived them all with the refreshment their draught needed. His lips, meantime, sustained his precious cigar, that, for him, first necessary and prime luxury of life. Its blue wreaths curled prettily enough amongst the flowers, and in the evening light. He spoke no more to the pupils, nor to the mistresses, but gave many an endearing word to a small spanieless, if one may coin a word, that nominally belonged to the house, but virtually owned him as master, being fonder of him than of any inmate. A delicate, silky, loving and lovable little doggy she was, trotting at his side, looking with expressive, attached eyes into his face, and whenever he dropped his bonnet grec or his handkerchief, which he did occasionally in play, crouching beside it with the air of a miniature lion guarding a kingdom's flag. There were many plants, and as the amateur gardener fetched all the water from the well in the court, with his own active hands, his work spun out to some length. The great school clock ticked on. Another hour struck. The carré and the youthful group lost the illusion of sunset. Day was drooping. My lesson, I perceived, must tonight be very short, but the orange trees, the cacti, the camellias were all served now. Was it my turn? Alas! In the garden were more plants to be looked after, favourite rose bushes, certain choice flowers. Little Sylvie's glad bark and whine followed the receding paletote down the alleys. I put up some of my books. I should not want them all. I sat and thought and waited, involuntarily deprecating the creeping invasion of twilight. Sylvie, gaily frisking, emerged into view once more, heralding the returning paletote. The watering pot was deposited beside the well. It had fulfilled its office. How glad I was! Monsieur washed his hands in a little stone bowl. There was no longer time for a lesson now. Ere long the prayer bell must ring. But still we should meet. He would speak. A chance would be offered of reading in his eyes the riddle of his shyness. His ablutions over, he stood, slowly rearranging his cuffs, looking at the horn of a young moon, set pale in the opal sky, and glimmering faint on the aureole of Jean-Baptiste. Sylvie watched the mood contemplative. Its stillness irked her. She whined and jumped to break it. He looked down. "Petite exigeante," said he, "you must not be forgotten one moment, it seems." He stooped, lifted her in his arms, sauntered across the court, within a yard of the line of windows near one of which I sat. He sauntered lingeringly, fondling the spaniel in his bosom, calling her tender names in a tender voice. On the front doorsteps he turned. Once again he looked at the moon, at the grey cathedral, over the remoter spires and house roofs, fading into a blue sea of night mist. He tasted the sweet breath of dusk, and noted the folded bloom of the garden. He suddenly looked round. A keen beam out of his eye raised the white facade of the classes, swept the long line of croisées. I think he bowed. If he did, I had no time to return the courtesy. In a moment he was gone. The moonlit threshold lay pale and shadowless before the closed front door. Gathering in my arms all that was spread on the desk before me, I carried back the unused heap to its place in the third class. The prayer bell rang. I obeyed its summons. The morrow would not restore him to the Rue Fossette, that day being devoted to his college. I got through my teaching. I got over the intermediate hours. I saw evening approaching and armed myself for its heavy ennui. Whether it was worse to stay with my co-inmates or to sit alone, I had not considered. I naturally took up the latter alternatives. If there was a hope of comfort for any moment, the heart or head of no human being in this house could yield it. Only under the lid of my desk could it harbour, nestling between the leaves of some book, gilding a pencil point, the nib of a pen, or tinging the black fluid in that ink-glass. With a heavy heart I opened my desk lid. With a weary hand I turned up its contents. One by one, well-accustomed books, volumes, sewn in familiar covers, were taken out and put back hopeless. They had no charm, they could not comfort. Is this something new, this pamphlet in lilac? I have not seen it before, and I rearranged my desk this very day, this very afternoon. The tract must have been introduced within the last hour while we were at dinner. I opened it. What was it? What would it say to me? It was neither tale nor poem, neither essay nor history. It neither sung, nor related, nor discussed. It was a theological work. It preached and it persuaded. I lent to it my ear very willingly, for, small as it was, it possessed its own spell, and bound my attention at once. It preached Romanism, it persuaded to conversion. The voice of that sly little book was a honeyed voice. Its accents were all unction and balm. Here roared no utterance of Rome's thunders, no blasting of the breath of her displeasure. The Protestant was to turn Papist, not so much in fear of the heretic's hell, as on account of the comfort, the indulgence, the tenderness Holy Church offered. Far be it from her to threaten or to coerce. Her wish was to guide and win. She persecute? Oh dear no, not on any account. This meek volume was not addressed to the hardened and worldly. It was not even strong meat for the strong. It was milk for babes, the mild effluence of a mother's love towards her tenderest and her youngest, intended wholly and solely for those whose head is to be reached through the heart. Its appeal was not to intellect. It sought to win the affectionate through their affections, the sympathizing through their sympathies. St. Vincent de Paul, gathering his orphans about him, never spoke more sweetly. I remember one capital inducement to apostasy was held out in the fact that a Catholic who had lost dear friends by death could enjoy the unspeakable solace of praying them out of purgatory. The writer did not touch on the firmer peace of those whose belief dispenses with purgatory altogether. But I thought of this, and on the whole preferred the latter doctrine as the most consolatory. The little book amused, and did not painfully displease me. It was a canting, sentimental, shallow little book, yet something about it cheered my gloom and made me smile. I was amused with the gambols of this unlicked wolf-cub, muffled in the fleece, and mimicking the bleat of a guileless lamb. Portions of it reminded me of certain Wesleyan Methodist tracts I had once read when a child. They were flavoured with about the same seasoning of excitation to fanaticism. He that had written it was no bad man, and while perpetually betraying the trained cunning, the cloven hoof of his system, I should pause before accusing himself of insincerity. His judgment, however, wanted surgical props. It was rickety. I smiled then over this dose of maternal tenderness, coming from the ruddy old lady of the 7 Hills. Smiled, too, at my own disinclination, not to say disability, to meet these melting favours. Glancing at the title page, I found the name of Père Silas. A fly-leaf bore in small but clear and well-known pencil characters, from PCDE to LY. And when I saw this I laughed, but not in my former spirit. I was revived. A mortal bewilderment cleared suddenly from my head and vision. The solution of the Sphinx riddle was won. The conjunction of those 2 names, Père Silas and Paul Emmanuel, gave the key to all. The penitent had been with his director, permitted to withhold nothing, suffered to keep no corner of his heart sacred to God and to himself. The whole narrative of our late interview had been drawn from him. He had avowed the covenant of fraternity, and spoken of his adopted sister. How could such covenant, such adoption, be sanctioned by the Church? Fraternal communion with a heretic? I seemed to hear Père Silas annulling the unholy pact, warning his penitent of its perils, entreating, enjoining reserve, nay, by the authority of his office, and in the name and by the memory of all Monsieur Emmanuel held most dear and sacred, commanding the enforcement of that new system whose frost had pierced to the marrow of my bones. These may not seem pleasant hypotheses, yet by comparison they were welcome. The vision of a ghostly troubler hovering in the background was as nothing matched with the fear of spontaneous change arising in Monsieur Paul himself. At this distance of time, I cannot be sure how far the above conjectures were self-suggested, or in what measure they owed their origin and confirmation to another quarter. Help was not wanting. This evening there was no bright sunset. West and east were one cloud. No summer night mist, blue yet rose-tinged, softened the distance. A clammy fog from the marshes crept grey round Villette. Tonight the watering pot might rest in its niche by the well. A small rain had been drizzling all the afternoon, and still it fell fast and quietly. This was no weather for rambling in the wet alleys under the dripping trees, and I started to hear Sylvie's sudden bark in the garden, her bark of welcome. Surely she was not accompanied, and yet this glad, quick bark was never uttered save in homage to one presence. Through the glass door and the arching berceau I commanded the deep vista of the allée défendue. Thither rushed Sylvie, glistening through its gloom like a white guelder rose. She ran to and fro, whining, springing, harassing little birds amongst the bushes. I watched 5 minutes. No fulfilment followed the omen. I returned to my books. Sylvie's sharp bark suddenly ceased. Again I looked up. She was standing not many yards distant, wagging her white feathery tail as fast as the muscle would work, and intently watching the operations of a spade, plied fast by an indefatigable hand. There was Monsieur Emmanuel, bent over the soil, digging in the wet mould amongst the rain-laden and streaming shrubs, working as hard as if his day's pittance were yet to earn by the literal sweat of his brow. In this sign I read a ruffled mood. He would dig thus in frozen snow on the coldest winter day when urged inwardly by painful emotion, whether of nervous excitation or sad thoughts or self-reproach. He would dig by the hour with knit brow and set teeth, nor once lift his head or open his lips. Sylvie watched till she was tired. Again scampering devious, bounding here, rushing there, snuffing and sniffing everywhere, she at last discovered me in class. Instantly she flew barking at the panes, as if to urge me forth to share her pleasure, or her master's toil. She had seen me occasionally walking in that alley with Monsieur Paul, and I doubt not considered it my duty to join him now, wet as it was. She made such a bustle that Monsieur Paul at last looked up, and of course perceived why, and at whom she barked. He whistled to call her off. She only barked the louder. She seemed quite bent upon having the glass door opened. Tired, I suppose, with her importunity, he threw down his spade, approached, and pushed the door ajar. Sylvie burst in, all impetuous, sprang to my lap, and with her paws at my neck and her little nose and tongue somewhat overpoweringly busy about my face, mouth, and eyes, flourished her bushy tail over the desk, and scattered books and papers far and wide. Monsieur Emmanuel advanced to still the clamour and repair the disarrangement. Having gathered up the books, he captured Sylvie and stowed her away under his paletot, where she nestled as quiet as a mouse, her head just peeping forth. She was very tiny, and had the prettiest little innocent face, the silkiest long ears, the finest dark eyes in the world. I never saw her but I thought of Pauline de Bassompierre. Forgive the association, reader. It would occur. Monsieur Paul petted and patted her. The endearments she received were not to be wondered at. She invited affection by her beauty and her vivacious life. While caressing the spaniel, his eye roved over the papers and books just replaced. It settled on the religious tract. His lips moved. He half-checked the impulse to speak. What? Had he promised never to address me more? If so, his better nature pronounced the vow more honoured in the breach than in the observance, for with a second effort he spoke. "You have not yet read the brochure, I presume? It is not sufficiently inviting." I replied that I had read it. He waited, as if wishing me to give an opinion upon it unasked. Unasked, however, I was in no mood to do or say anything. If any concessions were to be made, if any advances were demanded, that was the affair of the very docile pupil of Père Silas, not mine. His eye settled upon me gently. There was mildness at the moment in its blue ray. There was solicitude, a shade of pathos. There were meanings composite and contrasted, reproach melting into remorse. At the moment, probably, he would have been glad to see something emotional in me. I could not show it. In another minute, however, I should have betrayed confusion had I not bethought myself to take some quill pens from my desk, and begin soberly to mend them. I knew that action would give a turn to his mood. He never liked to see me mend pens. My knife was always dull-edged. My hand, too, was unskilful. I hacked and chipped. On this occasion I cut my own finger, half on purpose. I wanted to restore him to his natural state, to set him at his ease, to get him to chide. "Maladroite!" he cried at last. "She will make mincemeat of her hands." He put Sylvie down, making her lie quiet beside his bonnet grec, and depriving me of the pens and penknife, proceeded to slice, nib, and point with the accuracy and celerity of a machine. "Did I like the little book?" he now inquired. Suppressing a yawn, I said I hardly knew. Had it moved me? I thought it had made me a little sleepy. After a pause, "Allons donc!" It was of no use taking that tone with him. Bad as I was, and he should be sorry to have to name all my faults at a breath, God and nature had given me trop de sensibilité et de sympathie, not to be profoundly affected by an appeal so touching. "Indeed," I responded, rousing myself quickly, "I was not affected at all, not a whit." And in proof I drew from my pocket a perfectly dry handkerchief, still clean and in its folds. Hereupon I was made the object of a string of strictures rather piquant than polite. I listened with zest. After those 2 days of unnatural silence, it was better than music to hear Monsieur Paul haranguing again in just his old fashion. I listened, and meantime solaced myself and Sylvie with the contents of a bonbonnière, which Monsieur Emmanuel's gifts kept well supplied with chocolate comfits. It pleased him to see even a small matter from his hand duly appreciated. He looked at me and the spaniel while we shared the spoil. He put up his penknife. Touching my hand with the bundle of new-cut quills, he said, "Dites donc, petite sœur, speak frankly. What have you thought of me during the last 2 days?" But of this question I would take no manner of notice. Its purport made my eyes fill. I caressed Sylvie assiduously. Monsieur Paul, leaning over the desk, bent towards us. "I call myself your brother," he said. "I hardly know what I am, brother, friend, I cannot tell. I know I think of you. I feel I wish you well. But I must check myself. You are to be feared. My best friends point out danger and whisper caution." "You do right to listen to your friends. By all means be cautious." "It is your religion, your strange, self-reliant, invulnerable creed, whose influence seems to clothe you in, I know not what, unblessed panoply. You are good. Père Silas calls you good, and loves you. But your terrible, proud, earnest Protestantism, there is the danger. It expresses itself by your eye at times, and again it gives you certain tones and certain gestures that make my flesh creep. You are not demonstrative, and yet just now, when you handled that tract, my God, I thought Lucifer smiled. Certainly I don't respect that tract. What then? Not respect that tract? But it is the pure essence of faith, love, charity. I thought it would touch you. In its gentleness, I trusted that it could not fail. I laid it in your desk with a prayer. I must indeed be a sinner. Heaven will not hear the petitions that come warmest from my heart. You scorn my little offering. Oh, cela me fait mal. Monsieur, I don't scorn it. At least not as your gift. Monsieur, sit down, listen to me. I am not a heathen. I am not hard-hearted. I am not unchristian. I am not dangerous, as they tell you. I would not trouble your faith. You believe in God and Christ and the Bible, and so do I. But do you believe in the Bible? Do you receive revelation? What limits are there to the wild, careless daring of your country and sect? Père Silas dropped dark hints. By dint of persuasion, I made him half define these hints. They amounted to crafty Jesuit slanders. That night, Monsieur Paul and I talked seriously and closely. He pleaded, he argued. I could not argue, a fortunate incapacity. It needed but triumphant logical opposition to effect all the director wished to be effected. But I could talk in my own way, the way Monsieur Paul was used to, and of which he could follow the meanderings and fill the hiatus, and pardon the strange stammerings, strange to him no longer. At ease with him I could defend my creed and faith in my own fashion. In some degree I could lull his prejudices. He was not satisfied when he went away, hardly was he appeased, but he was made thoroughly to feel that Protestants were not necessarily the irreverent pagans his director had insinuated. He was made to comprehend something of their mode of honouring the light, the life, the word. He was enabled partly to perceive that, while their veneration for things venerable was not quite like that cultivated in his church, it had its own, perhaps, deeper power, its own more solemn awe. I found that Père Silas, himself, I must repeat, not a bad man, though the advocate of a bad cause, had darkly stigmatized Protestants in general, and myself by inference, with strange names, had ascribed to us strange isms. Monsieur Emmanuel revealed all this in frank fashion, which knew not secretiveness, looking at me as he spoke with a kind, earnest fear, almost trembling lest there should be truth in the charges. Père Silas, it seems, had closely watched me, had ascertained that I went by turns and indiscriminately to the 3 Protestant chapels of Villette, the French, German, and English, id est the Presbyterian, Lutheran, Episcopalian. Such liberality argued in the father's eyes profound indifference. Who tolerates all, he reasoned, can be attached to none. Now, it happened that I had often secretly wondered at the minute and unimportant character of the differences between these 3 sects. At the unity and identity of their vital doctrines, I saw nothing to hinder them from being one day fused into one grand holy alliance, and I respected them all, though I thought that in each there were faults of form, encumbrances and trivialities. Just what I thought, that I did tell Monsieur Emmanuel, and explained to him that my own last appeal, the guide to which I looked, and the teacher which I owned, must always be the Bible itself, rather than any sect of whatever name or nation. He left me soothed, yet full of solicitude, breathing a wish as strong as a prayer that if I were wrong, heaven would lead me right. I heard, poured forth on the threshold, some fervid murmurings to Marie, Reine du Ciel, some deep aspiration that his hope might yet be mine. Strange! I had no such feverish wish to turn him from the faith of his fathers. I thought Romanism wrong, a great mixed image of gold and clay, but it seemed to me that this Romanist held the pure elements of his creed with an innocency of heart which God must love. The preceding conversation passed between 8 and 9 o'clock of the evening in a schoolroom of the quiet Rue Fossette, opening on a sequestered garden. Probably about the same, or a somewhat later hour of the succeeding evening, its echoes, collected by holy obedience, were breathed verbatim in an attentive ear at the panel of a confessional in the hoary church of the Magi. It ensued that Père Silas paid a visit to Madame Beck, and stirred by I know not what mixture of motives, persuaded her to let him undertake for a time the heretic Englishwoman's spiritual direction. Hereupon I was put through a course of reading. That is, I just glanced at the books lent me. They were too little in my way to be thoroughly read, marked, learned, or inwardly digested. And besides, I had a book upstairs under my pillow, whereof certain chapters satisfied my needs in the article of spiritual lore, furnishing such precept and example as, to my heart's core, I was convinced could not be improved on. Then Père Silas showed me the fair side of Rome, her good works, and bade me judge the tree by its fruits. In answer, I felt and I avowed that these works were not the fruits of Rome. They were but her abundant blossoming, but the fair promise she showed the world. That bloom, when set, savoured not of charity. The apple full-formed was ignorance, abasement, and bigotry. Out of men's afflictions and affections were forged the rivets of their servitude. Poverty was fed and clothed and sheltered to bind it by obligation to the Church. Orphanage was reared and educated that it might grow up in the fold of the Church. Sickness was tended that it might die after the formula and in the ordinance of the Church. And men were overwrought and women most murderously sacrificed, and all laid down a world God made pleasant for his creatures' good, and took up a cross monstrous in its galling weight, that they might serve Rome, prove her sanctity, confirm her power, and spread the reign of her tyrant Church. For man's good was little done, for God's glory less. 1,000 ways were opened with pain, with blood sweats, with lavishing of life. Mountains were cloven through their breasts, and rocks were split to their base, and all for what? that a priesthood might march straight on and straight upward to an all-dominating eminence, whence they might at last stretch the sceptre of their Moloch Church? It will not be. God is not with Rome, and, were human sorrows still for the Son of God, would he not mourn over her cruelties and ambitions, as once he mourned over the crimes and woes of doomed Jerusalem? O lovers of power! O mitred aspirants for this world's kingdoms! An hour will come, even to you, when it will be well for your hearts, pausing faint at each broken beat, that there is a mercy beyond human compassions, a love stronger than this strong death which even you must face, and before it fall, a charity more potent than any sin, even yours, a pity which redeems worlds, nay, absolves priests. My third temptation was held out in the pomp of Rome, the glory of her kingdom. I was taken to the churches on solemn occasions, days of fête and state. I was shown the papal ritual and ceremonial. I looked at it. Many people, men and women, no doubt far my superiors in 1,000 ways, have felt this display impressive, have declared that though their reason protested, their imagination was subjugated. I cannot say the same. Neither full procession, nor high mass, nor swarming tapers, nor swinging censers, nor ecclesiastical millinery, nor celestial jewellery, touched my imagination a whit. What I saw struck me as tawdry, not grand, as grossly material, not poetically spiritual. This I did not tell Père Silas. He was old, he looked vulnerable. Through every abortive experiment, under every repeated disappointment, he remained personally kind to me, and I felt tender of hurting his feelings. But on the evening of a certain day, when, from the balcony of a great house, I had been made to witness a huge mingled procession of the church and the army, priests with relics and soldiers with weapons, an obese and aged archbishop, habited in cambric and lace, looking strangely like a grey daw in bird-of-paradise plumage, and a band of young girls fantastically robed and garlanded, then I spoke my mind to Monsieur Paul. I did not like it, I told him. I did not respect such ceremonies. I wished to see no more. And having relieved my conscience by this declaration, I was able to go on, and, speaking more currently than my wont, to show him that I had a mind to keep to my reformed creed, that the more I saw of popery, the closer I clung to Protestantism. Doubtless there were errors in every church, but I now perceived by contrast how severely pure was my own compared with her whose painted and meretricious face had been unveiled for my admiration. I told him how we kept fewer forms between us and God, retaining indeed no more than perhaps the nature of mankind in the mass rendered necessary for due observance. I told him I could not look on flowers and tinsel, on wax lights and embroidery, at such times and under such circumstances as should be devoted to lifting the secret vision to him whose home is infinity, and his being eternity. That when I thought of sin and sorrow, of earthly corruption, mortal depravity, weighty temporal woe, I could not care for chanting priests or murmuring officials. That when the pains of existence and the terrors of dissolution pressed before me, when the mighty hope and measureless doubt of the future arose in view, then even the scientific strain, or the prayer in a language learned and dead, harassed with hindrance a heart which only longed to cry, God be merciful to me, a sinner. When I had so spoken, so declared my faith, and so widely severed myself from him, I addressed, then at last came a tone accordant, an echo responsive, one sweet chord of harmony in two conflicting spirits. Whatever say priests or controversialists, murmured Monsieur Manuel, God is good and loves all the sincere. Believe then what you can, and believe it as you can. One prayer at least we have in common. I also cry, Ô Dieu, sois apaisé envers moi qui suis pécheur. He leaned on the back of my chair. After some thought he again spoke. How seem in the eyes of that God who made all firmaments, from whose nostrils issued whatever of life is here, or in the stars shining yonder, how seem the differences of man? But as time is not for God, nor space, so neither is measure nor comparison. We abase ourselves in our littleness, and we do right, yet it may be that the constancy of one heart, the truth and faith of one mind according to the light he has appointed, import as much to him as the just motion of satellites about their planets, of planets about their suns, of suns around that mighty unseen centre incomprehensible, irrealizable, with strange mental effort only divined. God guide us all. God bless you, Lucy. End of chapter 36. Recorded by Moira Fogarty.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This is a reading by Evangeline Rich of the Finding Camelot podcast at www.findingcamelot.com. Villette by Charlotte Brontë. Chapter 37. Sunshine. It was very well for Paulina to decline further correspondence with Graham till her father had sanctioned the intercourse, but Dr. Bretton could not live within a league of the Hôtel Crécy, and not contrive to visit there often. Both lovers meant at first, I believe, to be distant. They kept their intention so far as demonstrative courtship went, but in feeling they soon grew very near. All that was best in Graham sought Paulina. Whatever in him was noble awoke, and grew in her presence. With his past admiration of Miss Fanshawe, I suppose his intellect had little to do, but his whole intellect and his highest tastes came into question now. These, like all his faculties, were active, eager for nutriment, and alive to gratification when it came. I cannot say that Paulina designedly led him to talk of books, or formally proposed herself for a moment the task of winning him to reflection, or planned the improvement of his mind, or so much as fancied his mind could in any one respect be improved. She thought him very perfect. It was Graham himself who, at first by the merest chance, mentioned some book he had been reading, and when in her response sounded a welcome harmony of sympathies, something pleasant to his soul, he talked on, more and better perhaps than he had ever talked before on such subjects. She listened with delight, and answered with animation. In each successive answer Graham heard a music waxing finer and finer to his sense. In each he found a suggestive, persuasive, magic accent that opened a scarce-known treasure-house within, showed him unsuspected power in his own mind, and what was better, latent goodness in his heart. Each liked the way in which the other talked. The voice, the diction, the expression pleased. Each keenly relished the flavour of the other's wit. They met each other's meaning with strange quickness. Their thoughts often matched like carefully chosen pearls. Graham had a wealth of mirth by nature. Paulina possessed no such inherent flow of animal spirits. Unstimulated, she inclined to be thoughtful and pensive. But now she seemed merry as a lark, in her lover's genial presence, and she glanced like some soft glad light. How beautiful she grew in her happiness I can hardly express, but I wondered to see her. As to that gentle ice of hers, that reserve on which she had depended, where was it now? Ah, Graham would not long bear it. He brought with him a generous influence that soon thawed the timid, self-imposed restriction. Now were the old Breton days talked over, perhaps brokenly at first, with a sort of smiling diffidence, then with opening candour and still growing confidence. Graham had made for himself a better opportunity than that he had wished me to give. He had earned independence of the collateral help that disobliging Lucy had refused. All his reminiscences of little Polly found their proper expression in his own pleasant tones, by his own kind and handsome lips. How much better than if suggested by me. More than once when we were alone, Paulina would tell me how wonderful and curious it was to discover the richness and accuracy of his memory in this matter. How, while he was looking at her, recollections would seem to be suddenly quickened in his mind. He reminded her that she had once gathered his head in her arms, caressed his leonine graces, and cried out, "Graham, I do like you." He told her how she would set a footstool beside him, and climb by its aid to his knee. At this day he said he could recall the sensation of her little hands smoothing his cheek, or burying themselves in his thick mane. He remembered the touch of her small forefinger, placed half tremblingly, half curiously, in the cleft of his chin, the lisp, the look with which she would name it a pretty dimple, then seek his eyes and question why they pierced so, telling him he had a nice, strange face, far nicer, far stranger, than either his mamma or Lucy Snowe. "Child as I was," remarked Paulina, "I wonder how I dared to be so venturous. To me he seems now all sacred, his looks are inaccessible, and, Lucy, I feel a sort of fear when I look at his firm, marble chin, at his straight Greek features. Women are called beautiful, Lucy. He is not like a woman, therefore I suppose he is not beautiful. But what is he, then? Do other people see him with my eyes? Do you admire him?" "I'll tell you what I do, Paulina," was once my answer to her many questions. "I never see him. I looked at him twice or thrice about a year ago, before he recognized me, and then I shut my eyes. And if he were to cross their balls 12 times between each day's sunset and sunrise, except from memory, I should hardly know what shape had gone by." "Lucy, what do you mean?" said she, under her breath. "I mean that I value vision, and dread being struck stone blind." It was best to answer her strongly at once, and to silence forever the tender, passionate confidences which left her lips sweet honey, and sometimes dropped in my ear molten lead. To me she commented no more on her lover's beauty. Yet speak of him she would, sometimes shyly, in quiet, brief phrases, sometimes with a tenderness of cadence, and music of voice exquisite in itself, but which chafed me at times miserably, and then, I know, I gave her stern looks and words. But cloudless happiness had dazzled her native clear sight, and she only thought Lucy fitful. "Spartan girl! Proud Lucy!" she would say, smiling at me. "Graham says you are the most peculiar, capricious little woman he knows. But yet you are excellent. We both think so." "You both think you know not what," said I. "Have the goodness to make me as little the subject of your mutual talk and thoughts as possible. I have my sort of life apart from yours." "But ours, Lucy, is a beautiful life, or it will be, and you shall share it." "I shall share no man's or woman's life in this world as you understand sharing. I think I have one friend of my own, but I am not sure. Until I am sure, I live solitary." "But solitude is sadness." "Yes, it is sadness. Life, however, has worse than that. Deeper than melancholy lies heartbreak." "Lucy, I wonder if anyone will ever comprehend you altogether." There is in lovers a certain infatuation of egotism. They will have a witness of their happiness, cost that witness what it may. Paulina had forbidden letters, yet Dr. Bretton wrote; and she had resolved against correspondence, yet she answered, were it only to chide. She made me read them. As she read Graham's, I scarce wondered at her exaction, and understood her pride. They were fine letters, manly and fond, modest and gallant. Hers must have appeared to him beautiful. They had not been written to show her talents, still less, I think, to express her love. On the contrary, it appeared that she had proposed to herself the task of hiding that feeling, and bridling her lover's ardour. But how could such letters serve such a purpose? Graham was become dear as her life. He drew her like a powerful magnet. For her there was influence unspeakable in all he uttered, wrote, thought, or looked. With this unconfessed confession, her letters glowed. It kindled them from greeting to adieu. "I wish papa knew. I do wish papa knew," began now to be her anxious murmur. "I wish, and yet I fear. I can hardly keep Graham back from telling him. There is nothing I long for more than to have this affair settled, to speak out candidly, and yet I dread the crisis. I am certain papa will be angry at the first. I fear he will dislike me almost. It will seem to him an untoward business. It will be a surprise, a shock. I can hardly foresee its whole effect on him." The fact was, her father, long calm, was beginning to be a little stirred, long blind on one point. An importunate light was beginning to trespass on his eye. To her he said nothing, but when she was not looking at, or perhaps thinking of him, I saw him gaze and meditate on her. One evening, Paulina was in her dressing-room, writing, I believe, to Graham. She had left me in the library reading. Mr. de Bassompierre came in. He sat down. I was about to withdraw. He requested me to remain. Gently, yet in a manner which showed he wished compliance. He had taken his seat near the window, at a distance from me. He opened a desk. He took from it what looked like a memorandum book. Of this book he studied a certain entry for several minutes. "Miss Snow," said he, laying it down, "do you know my little girl's age?" "About 18, is it not, sir?" "It seems so. This old pocket-book tells me she was born on the 5th of May in the year 18 blank, 18 years ago. It is strange, I had lost the just reckoning of her age. I thought of her as 12, 14, an indefinite age, but she seemed a child." "She is about 18, I repeated. She has grown up, she will be no taller." "My little jewel," said Monsieur de Bassompierre, in a tone which penetrated like some of his daughter's accents. He sat very thoughtful. "Sir, don't grieve," I said, for I knew his feelings, utterly unspoken as they were. "She is the only pearl I have," he said, "and now others will find out that she is pure and of price. They will covet her." I made no answer. Graham Bretton had dined with us that day. He had shone both in converse and looks. I knew not what pride of bloom embellished his aspect and mellowed his intercourse. Under the stimulus of a high hope, something had unfolded in his whole manner which compelled attention. I think he had purposed on that day to indicate the origin of his endeavours and the aim of his ambition. Mr. de Bassompierre had found himself forced, in a manner, to descry the direction and catch the character of his homage. Slow in remarking, he was logical in reasoning. Having once seized the thread, it had guided him through a long labyrinth. "Where is she?" he asked. "She is upstairs." "What is she doing?" "She is writing." "She writes, does she? Does she receive letters?" "None but such as she can show me. And, sir, they have long wanted to consult you." "Pshaw! They don't think of me. An old father! I am in the way." "Ah, Monsieur de Bassompierre, not so, that can't be. But Paulina must speak for herself, and Dr. Bretton, too, must be his own advocate." "It is a little late. Matters are advanced, it seems." "Sir, till you approve nothing is done. Only they love each other." "Only!" he echoed. Invested by fate with the part of confidant and mediator, I was obliged to go on. "Hundreds of times has Dr. Bretton been on the point of appealing to you, sir, but with all his high courage he fears you mortally." "He may well fear me. He has touched the best thing I have. Had he but let her alone, she would have remained a child for years yet. So, are they engaged?" "They could not become engaged without your permission." "It is well for you, Miss Snow, to talk and think with that propriety which always characterizes you, but this matter is a grief to me. My little girl was all I had. I have no more daughters and no son. Bretton might as well have looked elsewhere. There are scores of rich and pretty women who would not, I dare say, dislike him. He has looks and conduct and connection. Would nothing serve him but my Polly?" "If he had never seen your Polly, others might and would have pleased him. Your niece, Miss Fanshawe, for instance." "Ah, I would have given him Ginevra with all my heart, but Polly! I can't let him have her. No, I can't. He is not her equal," he affirmed rather gruffly. "In what particular is he her match? They talk of fortune. I am not an avaricious or interested man, but the world thinks of these things, and Polly will be rich." "Yes, that is known," said I. "All Villette knows her an heiress." "Do they talk of my little girl in that light?" "They do, sir." He fell into deep thought. I ventured to say, "Would you, sir, think any one Paulina's match? Would you prefer any other to Dr. Bretton? Do you think higher rank or more wealth would make much difference in your feelings towards a future son-in-law?" "You touch me there," said he. "Look at the aristocracy of Villette. You would not like them, sir?" "I should not. Never a duke, baron, or vicomte of the lot." "I am told many of these persons think about her, sir," I went on, gaining courage on finding that I met attention rather than repulse. "Other suitors will come, therefore, if Dr. Bretton is refused. Wherever you go, I suppose aspirants will not be wanting. Independent of heiressship, it appears to me that Paulina charms most of those who see her." "Does she? How? My little girl is not thought a beauty." "Sir, Miss de Bassompierre is very beautiful." "Nonsense! Begging your pardon, Miss Snow, but I think you are too partial. I like Polly. I like all her ways and all her looks, but then I am her father. And even I never thought about beauty. She is amusing, fairy-like, interesting to me. You must be mistaken in supposing her handsome." "She attracts, sir. She would attract without the advantages of your wealth and position." "My wealth and position! Are these any bait to Graham? If I thought so—" "Dr. Bretton knows these points perfectly, as you may be sure, Monsieur de Bassompierre, and values them as any gentleman would. as you would yourself under the same circumstances. But they are not his baits. He loves your daughter very much, he feels her finest qualities, and they influence him worthily. What, has my little pet fine qualities? Ah, sir, did you observe her that evening when so many men of eminence and learning dined here? I certainly was rather struck and surprised with her manner that day. Its womanliness made me smile. And did you see those accomplished Frenchmen gather round her in the drawing-room? I did, but thought it was by way of relaxation, as one might amuse oneself with a pretty infant. Sir, she demeaned herself with distinction, and I heard the French gentlemen say she was pétrie d'esprit et de grâce. Dr. Bretton thought the same. She is a good dear child, that is certain, and I do believe she has some character. When I think of it, I was once ill. Polly nursed me. They thought I should die. She, I recollect, grew at once stronger and tenderer as I grew worse in health, and as I recovered, what a sunbeam she was in my sick-room. Yes, she played about my chair as noiselessly and as cheerful as light. And now she is sought in marriage. I don't want to part with her, said he, and he groaned. You have known Dr. and Mrs. Bretton so long, I suggested, it would be less like separation to give her to him than to another. He reflected rather gloomily. True. I have long known Louisa Bretton, he murmured. She and I are indeed old friends. A sweet, kind girl she was when she was young. You talk of beauty, Miss Snow. She was handsome, if you will, tall, straight, and blooming. Not the mere child or elf my Polly seems to me. At 18, Louisa had carriage and stature fit for a princess. She is a comely and a good woman now. The lad is like her. I have always thought so, and favoured and wished him well. Now he repays me by this robbery. My little treasure used to love her old father dearly and truly. It is all over now, doubtless. I am an encumbrance. The door opened. His little treasure came in. She was dressed, so to speak, in evening beauty. That animation which sometimes comes with the close of the day warmed her eye and cheek. A tinge of summer crimson heightened her complexion. Her curls fell full and long on her lily neck. Her white dress suited the heat of June. Thinking me alone, she had brought in her hand the letter just written, brought it folded but unsealed. I was to read it. When she saw her father, her tripping step faltered a little, paused a moment. The colour in her cheek flowed rosy over her whole face. Polly, said Monsieur de Bassompierre in a low voice, with a grave smile, do you blush at seeing papa? That is something new. I don't blush. I never do blush, affirmed she, while another eddy from the heart sent up its scarlet. But I thought you were in the dining-room, and I wanted Lucy. You thought I was with John Graham Bretton, I suppose. But he has just been called out. He will be back soon, Polly. He can post your letter for you. It will save Mathieu a course, as he calls it. I don't post letters, said she, rather pettishly. What do you do with them, then? Come here and tell me. Both her mind and gesture seemed to hesitate a second, to say, shall I come? But she approached. How long is it since you became a letter-writer, Polly? It only seems yesterday when you were at your pot-hooks, labouring away absolutely with both hands at the pen. Papa, they are not letters to send to the post in your letter-bag. They are only notes, which I give now and then into the person's hands, just to satisfy. The person? That means Miss Snow, I suppose. No, papa. Not Lucy. Who then? Perhaps Mrs. Bretton? No, papa. Not Mrs. Bretton. Who then, my little daughter? Tell papa the truth. Oh, papa, she cried with earnestness, I will tell you the truth, all the truth. I am glad to tell you, glad, though I tremble. She did tremble. Growing excitement, kindling feeling, and also gathering courage, shook her. I hate to hide my actions from you, papa. I fear you and love you above everything but God. Read the letter, look at the address. She laid it on his knee. He took it up and read it through, his hand shaking, his eyes glistening meantime. He refolded it, and viewed the writer with a strange, tender, mournful amaze. Can she write so, the little thing that stood at my knee but yesterday? Can she feel so? Papa, is it wrong? Does it pain you? There is nothing wrong in it, my innocent little Mary, but it pains me. But, papa, listen. You shall not be pained by me. I would give up everything, almost, correcting herself. I would rather die than make you unhappy. That would be too wicked. She shuddered. Does the letter not please you? Must it not go? Must it be torn? It shall for your sake if you order it." "I order nothing." "Order something, papa. Express your wish. Only don't hurt, don't grieve Graham. I cannot bear that. I love you, papa, but I love Graham too, because it is impossible to help it." "This splendid Graham is a young scamp, Polly. That is my present notion of him. It will surprise you to hear that, for my part, I do not love him one whit. Ah, years ago I saw something in that lad's eye I never quite fathomed. Something his mother has not. A depth which warned a man not to wade into that stream too far. Now, suddenly, I find myself taken over the crown of the head." "Papa, you have not fallen in. You are safe on the bank. You can do as you please. Your power is despotic. You can shut me up in a convent, and break Graham's heart tomorrow, if you choose to be so cruel. Now, autocrat, now, czar, will you do this?" "Off with him to Siberia, red whiskers and all. I say, I don't like him, Polly, and I wonder that you should." "Papa," said she, "do you know you are very naughty? I never saw you look so disagreeable, so unjust, so almost vindictive before. There is an expression in your face which does not belong to you." "Off with him," pursued Mr. Home, who certainly did look sorely crossed and annoyed, even a little bitter. "But, I suppose, if he went, Polly would pack a bundle and run after him. Her heart is fairly won and weaned from her old father." "Papa, I say it is naughty, it is decidedly wrong to talk in that way. I am not weaned from you, and no human being and no mortal influence can wean me." "Be married, Polly. Espouse the red whiskers. Cease to be a daughter. Go and be a wife." "Red whiskers? I wonder what you mean, papa. You should take care of prejudice. You sometimes say to me that all the Scotch, your countrymen, are the victims of prejudice. It is proved now, I think, when no distinction is to be made between red and deep nut brown. Leave the prejudiced old Scotchman. Go away." She stood looking at him a minute. She wanted to show firmness, superiority to taunts. Knowing her father's character, guessing his few foibles, she had expected the sort of scene which was now transpiring. It did not take her by surprise, and she desired to let it pass with dignity, reliant upon reaction. Her dignity stood her in no stead. Suddenly her soul melted in her eyes. She fell on his neck. "I won't leave you, papa. I'll never leave you. I won't pain you. I'll never pain you," was her cry. "My lamb, my treasure," murmured the loving though rugged sire. He said no more for the moment. Indeed, those two words were hoarse. The room was now darkening. I heard a movement, a step without. Thinking it might be a servant coming with candles, I gently opened, to prevent intrusion. In the anteroom stood no servant. A tall gentleman was placing his hat on the table, drawing off his gloves slowly, lingering, waiting, it seemed to me. He called me neither by sign nor word, yet his eye said, "Lucy, come here," and I went. Over his face a smile flowed while he looked down on me. No temper save his own would have expressed by a smile the sort of agitation which now fevered him. "Monsieur de Bassompierre is there, is he not?" he inquired, pointing to the library. "Yes." "He noticed me at dinner? He understood me?" "Yes, Graham." "I am brought up for judgment, then, and so is she?" Mr. Home, we now and always continued to term him Mr. Home at times, is talking to his daughter. Ha! These are sharp moments, Lucy. He was quite stirred up. His young hand trembled. A vital, I was going to write mortal, but such words ill apply to one all living like him. A vital suspense now held, now hurried his breath. In all this trouble his smile never faded. "Is he very angry, Lucy?" "She is very faithful, Graham." "What will be done unto me? Graham, your star must be fortunate." "Must it? Kind prophet! So cheered I should be a faint heart indeed to quail. I think I find all women faithful, Lucy. I ought to love them, and I do. My mother is good, she is divine, and you are true as steel. Are you not?" "Yes, Graham." "Then give me thy hand, my little god-sister. It is a friendly little hand to me, and always has been. And now for the great venture. God be with the right. Lucy, say amen." He turned and waited till I said amen, which I did to please him. The old charm in doing as he bid me came back. I wished him success, and successful I knew he would be. He was born victor, as some are born vanquished. "Follow me," he said, and I followed him into Mr. Home's presence. "Sir," he asked, "what is my sentence?" "Well, Breton," said Mr. Home, "you have given me the usual reward of hospitality. I entertained you, you have taken my best. I was always glad to see you. You were glad to see the one precious thing I had. You spoke me fair, and meantime I will not say you robbed me, but I am bereaved, and what I have lost, you, it seems, have won. Sir, I cannot repent. Repent? Not you. You triumph, no doubt, John Graham. You descended partly from a Highlander and a chief, and there is a trace of the Celt in all you look, speak, and think. You have his cunning and his charm. The well, then, Polly, the fair hair, the tongue of guile, the brain of wile, are all come down by inheritance. Sir, I feel honest enough, said Graham, and a genuine English blush covered his face with its warm witness of sincerity. And yet, he added, I won't deny that in some respects you accuse me justly. In your presence I have always had a thought which I dared not show you. I did truly regard you as the possessor of the most valuable thing the world owns for me. I wished for it. I tried for it. Sir, I ask for it now. John, you ask much. Very much, sir. It comes from your generosity as a gift, from your justice as a reward. I can never earn it. Ay, listen to the Highland tongue, said Mr. Home. Look up, Polly. Answer this braw wooer. Send him away. She looked up. She shyly glanced at her eager, handsome suitor. She gazed tenderly on her furrowed sire. Papa, I love you both, said she. I can take care of you both. I need not send Graham away. He can live here. He will be no inconvenience, she alleged, with that simplicity of phraseology which was at times wont to make both her father and Graham smile. They smiled now. He will be a prodigious inconvenience to me, still persisted Mr. Home. I don't want him, Polly. He is too tall. He is in my way. Tell him to march. You will get used to him, papa. He seemed exceedingly tall to me at first, like a tower when I looked up at him, but on the whole I would rather not have him otherwise. I object to him altogether, Polly. I can do without a son-in-law. I should never have requested the best man in the land to stand to me in that relation. Dismiss this gentleman. But he has known you so long, papa, and suits you so well. Suits me, forsooth. Yes, he has pretended to make my opinions and tastes his own. He has humoured me for good reasons. I think, Polly, you and I will bid him good-bye. Till tomorrow only. Shake hands with grandpapa. No, I think not. I am not friends with him. Don't think to coax me between you. Indeed, you are friends. Graham, stretch out your right hand. Papa, put out yours. Now let them touch. Papa, don't be stiff. Close your fingers. Be pliant. There. But that is not a long clasp. Is it a grasp? Papa, you grasp like a vice. You crushed Graham's hand to the bone. You hurt him. He must have hurt him, for he wore a massive ring, set round with brilliants, of which the sharp facets cut into Graham's flesh and drew blood. But pain only made Dr. John laugh, as anxiety had made him smile. Come with me into my study, at last said Mr. Home to the doctor. They went. Their intercourse was not long, but I suppose it was conclusive. The suitor had to undergo an interrogatory and a scrutiny on many things. Whether Dr. Bretton was at times guileful in look and language or not, there was a sound foundation below. His answers, I understood afterwards, evinced both wisdom and integrity. He had managed his affairs well. He had struggled through entanglements. His fortunes were in the way of retrieval. He proved himself in a position to marry. Once more the father and lover appeared in the library. Monsieur de Bassompierre shut the door. He pointed to his daughter. "Take her," he said. "Take her, John Bretton, and may God deal with you as you deal with her." Not long after, perhaps a fortnight, I saw three persons, Count de Bassompierre, his daughter, and Dr. Graham Bretton, sitting on one seat, under a low-spreading and umbrageous tree, in the grounds of the palace at Bois de l'Etang. They had come thither to enjoy a summer evening. Outside the magnificent gates their carriage waited to take them home. The green sweeps of turf spread round them quiet and dim. The palace rose at a distance, white as a crag on Pentelicus. The evening star shone above it. A forest of flowering shrubs embalmed the climate of this spot. The hour was still and sweet. The scene, but for this group, was solitary. Paulina sat between the two gentlemen. While they conversed, her little hands were busy at some work. I thought at first she was binding a nosegay. No, with the tiny pairs of scissors glittering in her lap, she had severed spoils from each manly head beside her, and was now occupied in plaiting together the grey lock and the golden wave. The plait woven, no silk thread being at hand to bind it, a tress of her own hair was made to serve that purpose. She tied it like a knot, prisoned it in a locket, and laid it on her heart. "Now," said she, "there is an amulet made, which has virtue to keep you two always friends. You can never quarrel so long as I wear this." An amulet was indeed made, a spell framed which rendered enmity impossible. She was become a bond to both, an influence over each, a mutual concord. From them she drew her happiness, and what she borrowed, she, with interest, gave back. "Is there indeed such happiness on earth?" I asked, as I watched the father, the daughter, the future husband, now united, all blessed and blessing. "Yes, it is so. Without any coloring of romance, or any exaggeration of fancy, it is so. Some real lives do, for some certain days or years, actually anticipate the happiness of heaven; and, I believe, if such perfect happiness is once felt by good people, to the wicked it never comes. Its sweet effect is never wholly lost. Whatever trials follow, whatever pains of sickness or shades of death, the glory precedent still shines through, cheering the keen anguish and tinging the deep cloud. I will go farther. I do believe there are some human beings so born, so reared, so guided from a soft cradle to a calm and late grave, that no excessive suffering penetrates their lot, and no tempestuous blackness overcasts their journey. And often these are not pampered, selfish beings, but nature's elect, harmonious and benign, men and women mild with charity, kind agents of God's kind attributes. Let me not delay the happy truth. Graham Bretton and Paulina de Bassompierre were married, and such an agent did Dr. Bretton prove. He did not with time degenerate, his faults decayed, his virtues ripened, he rose in intellectual refinement, he won in moral profit. All dregs filtered away, the clear wine settled bright and tranquil. Bright, too, was the destiny of his sweet wife. She kept her husband's love, she aided in his progress. Of his happiness she was the cornerstone. This pair was blessed indeed, for years brought them with great prosperity, great goodness. They imparted with open hand, yet wisely. Doubtless they knew crosses, disappointments, difficulties, but these were well borne. More than once, too, they had to look on him whose face flesh scarce can see and live. They had to pay their tribute to the King of Terrors. In the fullness of years Monsieur de Bassompierre was taken, in ripe old age departed Louisa Bretton. Once, even, there rose a cry in their halls of Rachel weeping for her children. But others sprang healthy and blooming to replace the lost. Dr. Bretton saw himself live again in a son who inherited his looks and his disposition. He had stately daughters, too, like himself. These children he reared with a suave yet a firm hand. They grew up according to inheritance and nurture. In short, I do but speak the truth when I say that these two lives of Graham and Paulina were blessed, like that of Jacob's favoured son, with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lies under. It was so, for God saw that it was good. End of chapter 37.